There's a moment most empaths don't talk about. Not the moment things fall apart, not the moment they finally walk away, but the moment they see it. The moment something feels off. The moment a story doesn't quite add up. The tone shifts. The energy changes. And for a split second, they know. They know something isn't right. But then they let it go. That's the part that stays with you. Not that you didn't see it, but that you did. And you chose to stay anyway. He used to think he was just being patient. That's what he told himself. That he was understanding, that he was giving people time, that relationships were complicated, and sometimes people just needed someone to believe in them. But over time, that explanation started to feel less like truth and more like an excuse. Because if he was being honest, he didn't miss the red flags. He noticed them early, sometimes very early. The small inconsistencies in stories, the way people would explain why they needed help, how things never quite lined up, but somehow always ended with the same conclusion, that they needed something. And every time, there was a pause, a quiet moment where something inside him said, "This doesn't feel right." But then another voice would follow, a softer one, a more convincing one. Maybe you're overthinking. Maybe they're just going through something. Maybe this is your chance to show up differently. And just like that, the red flag turned into a responsibility. That's what people don't understand about empaths. They don't ignore red flags because they're blind. They ignore them because they reinterpret them. A red flag doesn't feel like danger. It feels like a call to help. He didn't see manipulation. He saw pain. He didn't see patterns. He saw potential. He didn't see someone taking advantage. He saw someone who just needed the right person to believe in them. And that belief cost him more than he realized. Because over time, something started to shift. The same people, the same patterns, different faces, but always the same outcome. He started to feel drained. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, like something was being taken from him, without him even noticing. And still, he stayed. Not because he didn't see it, but because leaving felt worse. Because the truth is, a lot of empaths don't stay because they're confused. They stay because they're connected. Connected to family, connected to history, connected to the idea of what things should be. He didn't just ignore red flags in relationships, he ignored them in family. And that's where it gets complicated. Because walking away from a stranger is one thing, but walking away from family feels like something else entirely. It feels like betrayal. It feels like failure. It feels like giving up on something that was supposed to last forever. So instead of leaving, he adapted. He explained things away. He justified behavior. He convinced himself that this is just how things were. And the more he did that, the easier it became. Not to see less, but to accept more. That's the trap. You don't stop seeing red flags. You just stop reacting to them. He would notice the same patterns, the same stories, the same subtle manipulation. But instead of confronting it, he would lecture. He thought if he explained things clearly enough, if he broke it down logically, if he showed them a better way to think, they would understand. But they weren't listening. That's the part that hit him later. All those conversations, all that effort, all that emotional energy. He thought it meant something. But for them, it didn't. Because while he was trying to fix the dynamic, they were just learning how far they could go. That realization changes you because you start to see it differently. You start to realize they weren't confused. They weren't lost. They weren't waiting for clarity. They were watching how much you would give, how much you would tolerate, how many times you would let something slide. And once they understood that, the pattern locked in. That's when it stops being accidental. That's when it becomes a dynamic. And the hardest part about that realization is not what they did, it's what you allowed. He struggled with that a lot. There were moments where he would look back and think, how did I let it go on for so long? Not because he didn't know, but because he did. That's where the regret comes from. Not ignorance, but awareness without action. And that's something a lot of empaths carry, because they're taught that being understanding is a strength, that being patient is a strength, that giving people chances is a strength. But nobody teaches them the line between understanding and enabling, between compassion and self-betrayal. Because at some point, helping stops being help. At some point, it becomes permission. Permission for people to continue doing exactly what they've been doing. And the more you allow it, the more it becomes expected. That's why people say empaths attract the wrong people. But it's not random. It's not bad luck. It's pattern recognition. Not on your side, on theirs. They recognize the signs. The willingness to listen, the patience, the tendency to explain instead of confront, the ability to see the good in people, even when it's not there. And once they see that, they lean into it. Not always consciously, but consistently. And the empath stays. Not because they don't see the red flags, but because they see something else too. They see the possibility of who that person could be. And that's the part that keeps them stuck. Because potential is powerful. It creates a version of someone that doesn't exist yet, but feels real enough to hold on to. And as long as that version exists, leaving feels like giving up on something that hasn't happened yet. But here's the truth. Potential is not reality. And building relationships based on potential is how empaths end up staying too long. He had to learn that the hard way, because eventually something inside him shifted. Not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly. He started paying attention differently, not to what people said, but to what they did. Not to the explanations, but to the patterns. And once he saw it clearly, he couldn't unsee it. That's when things started to feel different. Not better, at first, just clearer. And clarity can be uncomfortable, because once you see people for who they really are, you lose the version of them you were holding on to. And that version was easier to love. The real version isn't always as pretty. That's something nobody prepares you for. That moment when you realize it wasn't misunderstanding, it wasn't miscommunication. It was exactly what it looked like. And you knew it the whole time. That realization doesn't make you stronger overnight. It makes you quieter, more observant, more selective, and eventually more honest with yourself. Because at some point, you stop asking, why are they like this? And you start asking, why did I accept it? That's where the real shift happens. Not in understanding them, but in understanding yourself. Why you stayed, why you helped, why you ignored what you felt. And once you answer that, you don't need to change them anymore. You just need to change what you allow. That's where boundaries come from. Not anger, not resentment. Clarity. Clarity about what you see and what you're no longer willing to ignore. And the next time it happens, because it will. The next time something feels off. The next time a story doesn't add up. The next time that quiet voice shows up, you won't silence it. You'll listen. Because now you know that voice was never the problem. Ignoring it was. And once you stop ignoring it, everything changes. Not instantly, but permanently. Because you're no longer trying to save people who aren't asking to be saved. You're no longer explaining things to people who were never trying to understand. And most importantly, you're no longer betraying yourself just to keep something together. That's the real difference. Not that you stop caring, but that you start including yourself in that care. And for the first time, that feels different. Not heavy, not draining, just clear. And once you experience that, there's no going back. Because now, when you see a red flag, you don't reinterpret it. You respect it. And that changes everything.